Hi guys, it's me, Andrew Markowitz again. This time I'm going to be reacting to um, his full remarks that JD Vance, our Vice President of the United States, did at this TPUSA event, which I'm very grateful that he did, I'm very thankful for. I wish more political leaders would be willing to do this. The fact that they aren't, I think, highlights something quite great uh, about our current problems in the U.S. This is probably going to be probably not as long of a reaction as I've had on some videos, because it's just going to be my thoughts on his thoughts. And some side notes. I want to also say that anytime you're not seeing me do videos, like right now, I'm working on probably 3 videos. My testimony video, which might be multi-parted, um, the kind of a study of all the splits and denominations, and kind of like basically what's going to end up being like an hour deep dive into each denomination, what they are, what they believe, their foundational beliefs, why they split, how they're separate from all the different other Christianity churches, why they're still considered Christian or not Christian, etc., etc. Um, all that kind of stuff. And the third one is a video essay on biblical love, how it's different than modern love, why biblical love is better than modern love, and that one, that one's really gonna take a while, for a multitude of reasons, and might turn into something more than just a video essay. That's where I'll leave that with that one. But, anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what the vice president had to say on this matter, on a lot of different things. Let's go. I love that positive unity that's there right now in that aspect. That's a good thing to see. Um, don't let anybody say that that's not. The people who saying that's not, they want divisionism. They want you separated into these groups. That's not a good thing. Don't let them do that.
Oh, oh, Miss, I got a question. Are you ready?
I think that's like a college chant that they do. Probably this like college local chants. I know a lot of colleges do like they have like their own little local motto chants that they do at like football games and events and things like that. So that's probably what that was. I couldn't really hear the words. Before this, you guys get subtitles. We'll put those on.
Wow, that was impressive. They told me that would be impressive, and they were exactly right. So let me say a few words of thank you first to my dear friend and the widow of my dear friend Charlie Kirk. Erica, you have been such an amazing inspiration to the entire country.
Just to pause right here. God bless Erica Kirk, her family. May they continue to be in God's grace, and may He continue to watch over them. Just needed to say that as a quick little prayer, because yeah, that event, I don't think that event's ever gonna leave me.
How much do we love Erica Kirk? She's done a hell of a job.
Agreed.
I want to thank, we have a couple of Mississippi senators here. We have both Senator
Good.
Roger Wicker and Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Thank you guys for being here. We have the governor of Mississippi with us. We got an all-star crowd
Well,
here.
that's
Governor,
good.
thank you for being here. And most importantly, we have got over 10,000 students from across Mississippi. We are proud to have you, and we know that you are the future of Charlie Kirk's legacy. So thank you for being here.
That's good to hear.
I got this whole speech written, and I'm not going to deliver any of what I had written. I'm just going to speak from the heart, because that's what Charlie would so often do. And
Oh, so this is his speech. Okay.
when I think about
so it
what
isn't
we
his
lost
questioning event.
6
I'm
weeks
gonna have to
ago,
look for
it
that.
feels like forever ago when I was in a meeting in the West Wing, and one of my staff members came in and said that Charlie had been shot, and then I looked at my phone and I saw all the text messages and realized that my dear friend had been very seriously injured. Now, in the West Wing at that time, we actually thought that Charlie had a chance. We didn't know that he was eventually going to pass away. There were initial reports from the medical team that maybe things were going okay, and of course, eventually Charlie took his last breath and went home to be with his Lord and Savior. I remember thinking at that moment, first, of course, about Erica and the children. They've got their oldest, their daughter is very similar in age to our youngest child. And I remember thinking, what a terrible tragedy for that family. And the second thing that I thought was, what a terrible tragedy for the United States of America.
Agreed.
Because Charlie wasn't just a political figure. He wasn't just a guy who went around campus and said very interesting things and hosted all of these debates. He was a person who, particularly to the young people of this country, to all of you, he had the very best advice. And I think that's the most important way for me to honor Charlie, which is to repeat that advice, something I found true in my own life. Charlie wanted all of you, whatever life path you chose, whatever career you chose, whatever you ultimately did for a living, Charlie wanted you more than anything to invest in the things that were worth having, to build a life that was worth building.
I'm going to cut him off here, and I'm going to say what that is. And it is something I am working on, and I struggle with deeply. Relationships, in particular, finding your wife if you're a man, or finding your husband if you're a woman, and getting married and having kids is so very important. I just got done with a Bible study literally like 5 minutes ago with my parents and family, and we just sat down and had a pretty tough conversation before it. And it is truly due to the grace of the Lord that it was completely civil. There was no yelling, there was no screaming about anything. It was just open, truthful honesty about things, which is something I value very, very, very deeply. And I couldn't be happier that that's what our vice president is doing right now in this conversation, in this speech. And I hope I hit the nail on the head on this one. I hope that I cut him off correctly here, and that's what he's about to say. Because that's definitely one of the messages that has left its mark on me, that Charlie constantly said was get married, have kids. It's something that I want to do, but the Lord works in His time, and He will present me with that when He will. And I need to be patient, and I need to work with Him on it. And for now, I think He is working me in different ways, and He is developing me into the man that will be ready to be married. And I am more than happy to have that and to do that.
Building, and that started the most important advice he ever gave you was fall in love, get married, and start a family. And I can't honor Charlie without repeating
I nailed
that
it.
most
Let's
important
go.
advice. Now, most of you are probably too young to have found the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Some of you are lucky enough to have found that person already. But I will tell you, if you're as lucky and blessed as I have been, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And I found that person in my lovely wife, Usha, our second lady, who is here with us today. She's sitting in the audience somewhere. I don't know where. But I love you, honey. And have children. That's something Charlie also always told. I grew up in a generation. I'm 41 years old. I'm a millennial. And if you're being uncharitable, you would call me a geriatric millennial, which I really hate. I really hate being called a geriatric millennial, but here I am at 41 talking to all of you like I've got great wisdom. Here's the thing. The one regret the only regret that I really have in my entire life, and I've made plenty of mistakes, but the one regret that I have is that, frankly, I wish we had started having kids sooner. Because when you're a young father, you realize what an incredible blessing they are, but they're also very exhausting. And I know here at Ole Miss, we like to party a lot. And I know at Ole Miss, occasionally some of you will have a few drinks on a Friday or Saturday, or hopefully not a Tuesday night, but I'm sure that happens from time to time here in SEC country. But here's the thing. When you go out until 3 in the morning and wake up at 6 a.m. for class, the thing that I've learned in my old age is that incredible energy, God actually meant it for another purpose, and that purpose was to help take care of a family. So while you're young,
I would agree.
Have those babies
Well,
if you're able to. That's something Charlie said all the time.
Finding the person I love is because that energy definitely was built for that and that purpose. It makes so much sense.
But if you think of that advice, Charlie wanted you to get married. He wanted you to fall in love. He wanted you to build a family. He wanted you to find a vocation. That was the advice that he gave on campuses. But that's not just about you. That's also about our country and about our government. Because while you have the freedom to live life as you so choose, I have got a responsibility as your vice president to make the American dream as accessible as possible. And this is why, my friends, this is why we care about all the things that we care about. Why do I care so much about having a secure border in the United States of America? It's because I believe that when you let in a flood of illegal immigration, what it does is it drives down the wages of young people and makes housing unaffordable for the entire America.
This is a fact. Think about it. If you have a huge influx of population, that population wants and needs housing. So therefore housing is going to go up. And then if you have a bunch of people who are crossing that border illegally and therefore can work for less wages, it screws over your wages, it screws over my wages, it screws over everybody's wages. It lowers wages because companies can make and charge you less. They can demand you work for less because they can get people who will work for less. It's why you have to be cautious with immigration. You have to be cautious with who you let in. You have to be cautious with you can't have illegal immigration. You can't. It's not a tolerable thing. You can't have a tolerance level for how many illegal immigrants you let in a year. They're committing a crime and they have to go. Because all they're doing is they are hurting and using resources. They are. And part of being a follower of Christ is a big thing when you're fully converted to Christ and you're fully for Christ, is you will accept punishment and just punishment no matter what it is for what you have done. You will take it because you know it's the justice that is deserved to you. There's a beautiful story. David Wood tells it. I really recommend you watch his video on his testimony. I might link it in this video, where he tells his testimony video, and in that, the guy who ends up converting to Christianity when he's in prison turns him Christian because of the fact, well, not because of the fact, but the guy who originally wasn't a Christian at all turned himself in for 27 felonies. For 27 felonies, that guy turned himself in for, and admitted them, and went to jail for them. Think how insane that is. Who would do that? Who would be brave enough to do that? You commit that many crimes, you know you're going away for a long time. You plead guilty on all of them. But your conversion to faith is so strong and so true that you accept the justice that is supposed to be given to you. That's someone who's truly converted to Christ. That's someone who's truly following to Christ. So that's what I ask of everybody who calls himself Christian. Are you willing to turn yourself in for your crime, for your sin, for your wrongdoing? Because here's the thing: in the Bible, it is sinful to go against the laws of a nation. You can read Numbers to find this. You can read Romans to find this. You can read so many places in the Bible to find this. I really recommend picking it up and taking a read. You will find that the Bible is very much about borders. I believe it is in Romans where it states that God made and intended every nation and drew out the border lines for every single nation and for how long they will be there. God did. I mean, he knows all things, so it makes sense that he would be able to do so. So, yeah, I fully agree with this statement.
American population. That's why we closed down the border.
Good. It had to happen. Because you know what the beautiful thing about them having closed down this border is? Something that just happened recently is there was a massive gang raid, and I hope this continues, and I hope it gets bigger, and I hope they can do more in Brazil. That's what I'm praying for in Brazil right now. I don't know if you guys know what's going on in Brazil. Rio de Janeiro, I believe, is the name of the city. I think it is that one. It's Rio. It's the big city in Brazil, at least one of the biggest cities in Brazil by far. They had their governor of that city. I think it's a governor. It might be mayor. Decided, I am done and fed up with all these gangs and cartels. And so he got and motivated as many police officers as he could. I think it was like somewhere in the range of like 20,000 or some crazy number. And they just started going on a mass raid. And it was like all out war in the streets. And that's sad to see, but it's good to see as well. The cartels are one of the worst evils on this planet. I put them on the same levels of evils as I do Hamas, as I do terrorist organizations. They are no better. They are just as evil, if not more wicked, in what they do to other human beings, in their use of handing out drugs, which I think is criminal to do to another human being, is getting someone addicted to drugs and basically becoming a slave to you. That's evil. That's definitely a corruption of God's image. Like I truly say this with no remorse. I think the cartels are one of the most evil and horrid things on this planet. They should be absolutely condemned, and they need to be crushed. I'm going to say that in this video, and I'll say it 100,000 times. I have no fear on these matters. So, I hope that in us closing down our border in this way, it forces these governments to have to reconcile with the evil that they have let fester south of our border, and that they have continued to let control them. And I know that there are many populations in those countries that despise these groups and want nothing more than their removal. And I hope those groups grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and they are able to push out the evil. Do not be content with evil, is what I pray for my brothers and sisters down south of my border. Is that they not be content with the evil that is plaguing them, that is running their country, that is ruining their countries, that is destroying them. Do not be content with the sinful ilk. Condemn them openly and get them to turn to Christ and get them to turn their lives over. And if they refuse to do so and they come at you with the sword, you are perfectly okay with coming back at them with the sword. That is perfectly okay. Do everything in your power to not have to bring the sword to him. But if you gotta bring the sword, bring the sword. Don't be ashamed of it. It's an awful thing to have to bring the sword out. But when you're dealing with the level of evil where they suppress and act purely on the actions of violence and nothing else, which is what the cartels do. They rule by violence. They act by violence. They live by violence. Um, they live by evil. You have to be willing to shore that up back and bring down the hammer of justice and bring it down in its unmerciful form, unfortunately, because that is the only way that people who have fallen this deep can listen. It sucks. It's awful. But hey, it's the truth. And I would rather be honest and truthful on those things than I would on just hiding and being quiet. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So I won't do it.
The left will say our immigration policy is about hating immigration, hating immigrants. We don't hate anybody. We love our fellow citizens, and because we want them to have the American dream, we shut that border down the very first day that Donald J. Trump was the president of the United States.
And it was awesome that you did so, because it's having a good effect on the world. Whether people like it or not, it is doing good things.
I care about you being able to afford a home, which is why we fought so hard to fix the broken policies of the Biden administration. I want a lot of you, I'm sure there are military veterans in this room right now. I'm sure there are a lot of people who will join the military in the future, and we're proud of you. But part of America First is ensuring that we never ask you to go and do the American people's business unless it is in the interest of the United States of America, and that's how we honor the sacrifice of our troops.
That's good. As a vet to some degree,
and that's
I like
why,
that.
my friends, that's why we care so much about free speech. As Charlie lived and died for the basic principle that we ought to be able to talk about our differences, we ought to be able to debate them, and we ought to have faith that the best way to make sure that the best idea wins is to actually just have a discussion. And that is what this event is all about. That is what Turning Points USA is all about. And I am so proud.
That's what I want to continue
I'm
most
so
of all.
grateful to each and every person, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, for coming out and honoring one of the most important parts of Charlie's legacy, because we're going to have a discussion tonight, and that's what Charlie would want us to do. Now, I want to get to questions, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions, but I want to make just a couple of final points about Charlie's legacy in politics.
Oh, awesome.
The most
He's a
important
quick
thing about
speech.
Charlie is that
Awesome.
he's a great
I found the right
husband
thing.
and
Sweet.
a
Let's
great
go.
father. Erica told me probably 12 hours after Charlie had been pronounced dead, she was just absolutely devastated. She was unable, you know, if you've ever known anybody who's grieving, sometimes it's unable, they're unable to even hold a single thought for more than a few seconds.
Yeah.
And what Erica told me, and I'm going to get a little emotional, is that she said that Charlie never yelled at her, he never cussed at her, and that to me is a great legacy to leave as a husband and a father, for your wife to be able to say that my husband was always good to me, and Charlie was a good man.
That's awesome to hear.
But he also had the legacy of believing in political debate, and he was the most effective person in politics that I have ever seen. And by the way, that's not because Charlie always agreed with me and the president's policies. I remember one time in particular where Charlie Kirk called me, and guys, he was mad. It was one, you know, I wouldn't say the last conversation that I had with him, but it was in the last few months of his life. And he called me and he said, JD, I'm really worried. I'm really worried that what's going on in the Middle East right now is going to lead the United States into a protracted military conflict. I've never told anybody that Charlie was really worried about that in the final months of his life. Now, here's the thing. Charlie was so effective, and he was so trusted by both me and the President of the United States, that when Charlie made that phone call, I didn't say, screw you, you don't know what you're talking about. I listened to him. And I really believe that one of the reasons why the President of the United States knocked out the Iranian nuclear facilities, but never got the United States into a protracted military conflict and never lost a single American in a Middle Eastern conflict is because we had the wisdom and the good sense to recognize that the American people are done with American troops dying in unnecessary foreign conflicts.
You don't have to.
But Charlie Kirk reminded me of that. Charlie Kirk.
That's awesome to hear.
So that was a great moment for our country. It was a great moment for my friendship with Charlie Kirk, because friendship is not just about telling everybody what they want to hear. It's not just about agreeing with everybody all the time. It's about having the trust in another human being that you can tell them they're wrong and actually encourage them to change their mind. Or in that case, not necessarily even tell us that we were wrong, but make sure that we were thinking about all the options. And of course, under the president's leadership, we were doing exactly that. But Charlie was so good at that. And I think that's one of the ways in which I want all of you to honor your legacy. Obviously, you care about our great nation or you wouldn't be here. A lot of you will go on to become future leaders in business or in politics. A lot of you will run campaigns. A lot of you will work on campaigns. A lot of you will be future leaders. There might even be a lowly future vice president of the United States in this very room. But here's the thing that I want all of you to remember. Charlie wasn't effective just because he had opinions. A lot of people have opinions. Charlie was effective because he was courageous, because he worked very hard, and because he made his vision a reality. And so,
and honestly, some self-criticism here. I need to work even harder. I need to do more and more. I've been struggling with a lot of things. My depression eats me alive a lot. I need to be stronger. When I'm in that depth, I need to think about, nah, this is time to just dig deeper and find ways to do more. So, that's me not living up to my not just to my expectations, but to expectations in general. And I don't want to do that anymore. I've done that my whole life, and I don't want to do that anymore. So, yeah, great to hear these.
If you care about this country, as I know all of you do, don't just complain about social media. Get up and get involved in a campaign.
Exactly.
If you want a better policy outcome, even from an administration you voted for, then get out and get involved and making your voice heard. If you care about this country, love it enough to get involved in the process and how we govern it. That is the only way we are going to...
That's what I hope to eventually be able to do. Right now, I am too poor, dead, and broke to be able to do that. It sucks, but I eventually hope to be able to make that impact and have that movement, have that motion.
To save the United States of America, and that is perhaps the greatest contribution that you can make to Charlie Kirk's legacy is getting involved in saving this country. I'm in the fight, and I know every single one of you are with me. God bless you, and thank you for having me.
From what I see from my perspective, is our vice president has definitely become much more deeply involved in his faith since the death of his best. I don't know if he was his best friend, but he was definitely a really important friend. Is the only thing I can describe to that relationship. So that's amazing to see. And I'm hoping that we get to the question too.
Thank you. But hey, please, I appreciate that, but we're not even halfway done. So here's I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds awesome. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen. What we're gonna do next is actually take
Yeah,
some questions.
48.
And I remember one of my favorite things about Charlie, not that there aren't going to be some questioners who agree with me.
I love Vance, man. Alright, this guy is so humble. He's like, hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves there. I don't know if I'm ready for that ballpark. Oh. That's awesome to see. You don't often see that from a guy.
But if you disagree with me, I would ask that you come to the front of the line, because we want to talk to people we agree with. We also want to hear from people we disagree with. It is hard for me to see because the spotlights are very bright, but whoever's in line, go ahead and ask your question. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I can see you. How you doing?
Hi, Mr. Vice President. Thank you so much for being here. My name's Lucy.
Oh, no.
Chapter for this for being
Hold
here.
on.
My name's Lucy, and I'm Ellie, and we're with the Turning Point chapter for this question.
Thank you, guys.
Can you tell us how your faith helps you in your role as Vice President?
Well, I appreciate that. That is a very good question, and this is another way in which Charlie has affected my life. I would say that I grew up, again, in a generation where even if people had very deep personal faith, they didn't talk about their faith a whole lot. And I grew up in a country where you just didn't hear political leaders talk about their faith.
Agreed. And I think that's the biggest problem. The devil works best when we're isolated and we're silent. He's been quietly working in America for a long time to make all of us be quiet in our faith. All of us be individually quiet in our faith. And you just have quiet faith. But if you read the Bible, the apostles were not quiet in their faith. The apostles lived their faith. If you read the Bible, Daniel lived his faith. David lived his faith. So many of the people in the Bible were not often quiet in their faith. They were loud, open, and true in their faith. And that is super, super important. And we've gotten away from that. We're dealing with the consequences of that. And we're seeing a lot of backlash to it. I'm here to say, in spite of that backlash, be open, be public with your faith. Don't be afraid of it. Know the time and place. That's definitely a lesson I've been having to learn. But don't be afraid about it. Don't be afraid about it. That's definitely what I've learned.
Faith, but the reason why I try to be the best husband I can be, the best father I can be, the reason why I care so much about all the issues that we're going to talk about is because I believe that I've been placed in this position for a brief period of time to do the most amount of good for God and for the country that I love so much. And that's the most important way that my faith influences me, is we all get a limited opportunity to make a difference. And if you believe as we believe, you believe that God, you believe that Jesus Christ has a plan. And sometimes we don't understand that plan. By the way, one way I don't understand that plan is why my friend lost his life 6 weeks ago. Sometimes I get pissed off about that.
Yeah, I bet you do, and that I can't imagine that pain. I honestly can't. But again, I'm actually truly loving the honesty of our vice president here and how he's speaking.
But what I remind myself is that there is a deeper rhythm, that Jesus Christ is the author of the fate of human history.
Yep.
And we are charged
Exactly.
to do everything that we can to effectuate that vision, to make our country a more virtuous place, a more prosperous place where people can raise a family and not be persecuted for their faith, but teach their children their faith. That recognition that all of us have a duty. And I have two very important duties as Vice President of the United States, to the American people and to God, and that's the most important influence my faith has on me. Thank you.
That's awesome to hear.
I understand your view on illegal immigration is it should be a top priority, strengthening our southern borders and fighting the massive drug trafficking that's taken place while securing jobs for the working class Americans. Also, deporting every single person who's invaded our country illegally, which I 100% agree on. My question to you is, what is your view on legal immigration? Personally, I have a girlfriend who's studying in America off a visa. Our hope is eventually getting a green card. So what is your view on legal immigration? Should we reduce it? Also, what is your plan for a merit-based system?
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate the question. And look, my honest view is that right now, America, thanks in part to the Biden border invasion, but also thanks in part to a lot of bad immigration policy, right now, we have let in too many immigrants into the United States of America. That is just a fundamental reality. Now, look, legal immigration is complicated because we let in about 1 million legal immigrants into the United States of America every single year. And I think the evidence is pretty clear that a lot of those immigrants are actually undercutting the wages of American workers. It's one of the reasons why the President of the United States,
And that's a tough call to make, but I would fully agree with that statement. And people don't like that. That bothers and agitates a lot of people because they want their whole family to come here.
The reason why the President of the United States and a lot of us in the administration have encouraged H-1B reform, because if you look at the H-1B visa, what it's supposed to be is that you have a super genius who's studying at an American university, who's working at a great company. You want that super genius to stay in the United States of America and not go somewhere else. What it's actually used to do is hire an accountant at a 50% discount to an American citizen.
Yep.
I don't think that we should be hiring accountants from foreign countries when we've got accountants right here in the United States that would love to work for a good wage.
Agreed.
Now, you asked about, I think, your girlfriend, you said, and I obviously don't know the full details about your situation, but my view is, look, there are people who want to come to the United States of America, and some of them, I'm sure, can enrich the United States of America by coming here, but we have got to get our overall numbers way, way down. Too many people have come into the United States of America. I am married to the daughter of immigrants who came to the United States in the 1980s.
I would fully agree with this.
That some immigrants, many immigrants do in fact enrich the United States of America, but here's the problem. We don't even know how many illegal aliens we have. We don't even know. The best guess is probably 25, 30 million people. I've heard estimates as high as 50 million. When something like that happens, you've got to allow your own society to cohere a little bit, to build a sense of common identity for all the newcomers to assimilate, the ones who are going to stay, to assimilate into American culture. Until you do that, you've got to be careful about any additional immigration, in my view.
Agreed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, I have a question about Israel and Trump's policy towards it. Do you think it's a conflict of interest for Miriam Adelson, an Israeli donor, to give millions of dollars to his campaign and then Trump have pro-Israeli policies?
Well, if you're asking, do I think the President of the United States has a conflict of interest? No, I do not, because I know how the President of the United States makes his decisions and I see it behind the scenes. Now, as the President himself has said, Miriam Adelson, who, by the way, I know and I have a very good relationship with her, she is very clear about the fact. She doesn't hide the fact that she really loves Israel, and that is part of what motivates her political giving. That is a reality. At the same time, the President of the United States is America first through and through. And let me give you just a couple of examples of this. Number one, we have heard from some pro-Israel voices, some people who really love the state of Israel, that they don't want us to have a relationship with certain Middle Eastern countries. Well, the president, his attitude is, we need to build relationships with any country where we have shared interests, and he's going to do it if it's in the interest of the American people, and he's done exactly that. Number two, there were people, and I remember this criticism of the President of the United States, I just raised it in the context of a conversation that I had with Charlie. I remember when people said that the President of the United States was going to get us into a multi-100,000 troop regime change war for Israel. This was 4 months ago, this was 6 months ago. Now, the people who accused the President of the United States of wanting to get us into a regime change war for Israel, I wonder if they stepped back and said, you know what, we were wrong about that. Because the President of the United
I don't think
States
they have,
did not
honestly.
want to get us into
Watching
a
those
regime
people,
change war
no,
for
they
any other
haven't.
country. He wanted to knock out a nuclear facility and get everybody back home, and that's exactly what he did. So I understand there's
Which
some
is what happened.
frustrations out there,
Great.
but I think the President of the United States, more than any president of my lifetime, is willing to stand up to anybody if he thinks it puts the interests of the American people first. Thank you.
Hello, Vice President Vance.
How you doing?
Good. I have a question. Do you condone large private corporations such as Palantir hoarding data caches on U.S. citizens?
No, I don't condone it. And here's the thing. So I get asked about Palantir a lot because there's this internet meme out there that somehow I am super in bed with Palantir. And here's the thing that I'd say about this. Palantir is a private company. They sometimes do a useful service, and sometimes they're going to do things that we don't like. You should be demanding that your representatives do two things when it comes to Palantir or when it comes to any other technology company. Number one, protecting your data.
Yeah!
What's going on with artificial
Let's go.
intelligence is going to mean that there are massive inducements to steal your data, to harvest it, and to use it against you to
Agreed.
sell digital advertisements. That is not what I believe in, and I've been fighting against it, whether it's Palantir or any other technology company, literally before I ran for office. When I ran for office, I was criticized by Republicans in my Republican Senate primary because I was talking then about Google and Facebook harvesting our data. It's unacceptable. I don't care who does it. I don't want them to do it. Number two, and this is also very important, what's going on with artificial intelligence, we got to be worried about large-scale surveillance.
Agreed.
Okay? Everything. You asked about Palantir. Do you know that every time you make a credit card transaction, the credit card companies are collecting data on how you spend your money? Do you know that every time you linger over a link on the internet for more than a half second, the search engines are collecting data on you so that they can sell you advertisements? One of the biggest questions for American policy over the next 10 years is how to ensure that you are a sovereign citizen. And you cannot be a sovereign citizen if any private corporation or any government can steal something from you that belongs to you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is awesome to hear. That's probably one of the best things you could hear about.
Vice President J.D. Vance, good evening.
Thank
My
you.
question is, the Republican
And I'll get into that a little bit. That is probably one of the biggest issues actually facing us today, is how much we are watched and harvested. So absolutely that needs to get handled, and the foot needs to come down on that really, really fast within the next probably 5 to 6, maybe 8 years tops. And if it doesn't, world's gonna go off a cliff really, really, really fast. It's already, if you guys know what's going on in Britain and the other countries in Europe, they're already there.
Party, they stand for the right to bear arms. A lot of things the founding fathers really made a priority.
Sure.
And I feel as if requiring Christianity in public schools goes against the founding fathers' wish of freedom of religion. What do you think about that?
Well, I guess who is saying that we require Christianity in public schools?
Just from what I've seen on the media and the news, it seems like the Trump administration had wanted to make praying.
I don't think that's at all. I think you're getting this from a lot of bad sources. Not wrong, but bad sources.
In schools and Christian values incorporated.
I'm gonna guess what he says. They're pro-Christian values because, fun fact, Christian values are good values. If you don't believe me, don't fish your Bible, read your Bible, and you will find, yeah, there's a lot of really, 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 really good values in the Bible. And you probably should follow most of those values in the Bible. Because they're just better values.
Well, look, I think Christian values are a good thing, and I'll talk to you about why I think that's a good thing. But that's separate from forcing people to pray, which I don't think that anybody, certainly no Christian that I know, would ever support.
Absolutely not. You can't force people to pray. It's not actually possible, and I'll tell you why. Praying has to be a genuine communication and talk with you and God. That a prayer is not wish fulfillment or any of these other things that a lot of people think is. No, a prayer is a conversation between you and God. That's what prayer is. You can't have prayer. It can't even be considered prayer if you just put your hands together and pretend. That's not prayer. So you can never actually force someone to pray to God. You can't do it. So obvious, and Christians, if they're good Christians and real Christians, and I do think there's a difference, want a genuine conversion of faith, want a genuine turnover. And I've already alluded to part of what a genuine turnover is a lot of the time. So, yeah, I'm really wondering where he got this from.
Or ever endorse. And let me just say something generally about all the people. I see there's a big line, and I hope I can get to everybody's question. I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, I went to an event at my church, which was a book signing with Oliver North and Sean Hannity, the Fox News host. And this was back before, this was, I guess, 25 years ago. And so neither of these guys was maybe as big as they are today. And I remember standing in line, and I'm about to say hello to Oliver North and Sean Hannity, and I remember thinking to myself, I was so nervous, all I need to do is shake their hand, give them a firm handshake, and tell them my name.
Vance.
That's what I'm thinking. Firm handshake, tell them my name. Firm handshake, tell them my name. And I get to the front of the line, and Sean Hannity looks at me, and he says, "How are you doing?" And I totally panic, and I go, JD. Because I had rehearsed shaking and saying my name. My point is, I admire your guys' courage, and please don't be nervous. If you need to work through a question, think about it, speak it. We're all here to have a nice conversation, and we're all
we are.
of it.
And that's awesome
Here's
to
the
hear.
thing when you talk about forcing, I'm going to answer your question, of forcing Christianity, forcing people to pray. There's a liberal idea out there that I think is
good rephrasing of that. I have to give him credit that good rephrasing of that, because you can't force Christianity and you can't forcing people to pray.
wrong.
Yeah.
And that's that liberalism is the source of freedom of religion. And actually, if you go back to the original founding documents of the United States of America, if you go back to the Anglo-legal tradition...
Yeah! He's getting into this! Yes! Yes! Get into it! Yes, 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 yes!
And well before there was ever a United States of America, what you find is that freedom of religion is actually a Christian concept.
Absolutely. Christians have always been open to the idea of there being other religions. We have always asked for open communication with them. And, fun fact, especially if you read your Bible, go read Acts, we've dealt with that at the point of spears and being nailed to crosses and beheadings, and execution and imprisonment most of the time. The vast majority of the time, us wanting to be open about our religion and coming forth with our religion, the response was, "We're gonna kill you." That was the response a lot of the time. So, it is always so interesting to me that people think that, oh, Christians are very anti-freedom. No, we're not. Like, Christians want to have that open discussion with you, want to openly talk with you about these things, want to openly say these things with you. We want the world to be more open and free to these things, because we know that with freedom comes truth, and with truth comes God, and with God comes salvation. That's genuinely what we believe.
And the reason...
What's his reason? I want to hear his.
And the reason it's a Christian concept is very simple. Because Christianity, Imago Dei, the idea that we are all made in the image of our Creator, means that we must respect the free will of every...
Exactly. Freedom. Imago Dei. image of God is probably one of the most vital things to actually be upholden to and truly believe in as a Christian. We are all made in the image of God. No one is better, superior, or made more in the image of God, or less than. I probably will be making a video on that soon. That seems like a quicker video that I can easily make. Going into that, because that's just probably a reading on Genesis and a probably tops like hour-long video on things. So pretty easy to get that one done. Not like the other ones, which are like hour-long series that I'm digging into. With all these other ones,
Single person. Now, part of that is you have a conversation with people. Having free will doesn't mean that you're not allowed to encourage somebody, that you're not allowed to talk to somebody about your faith,
Exactly.
that you're not allowed to talk about certain values in school. When our founders talked about freedom of religion, they didn't mean you weren't allowed to say a Christian prayer in a public school or that you weren't allowed to talk about Jesus Christ in a public forum. They just meant that nobody could force you to profess the Christian faith. That had to come from your own free will.
that really is it. It was honestly this idea that we cannot force others to come to Christianity. That is more in the idea of the freedom of religion. And if you don't believe me, go to the source documents, go to the pre-Anglican founding documents, and go to the Federalist Papers. Go to those readings, go to those writings. I still got to do my rereading on them because I only read them briefly when I was in high school. So I've got a lot of rereading to do, and I'm stuck in too many readings right now. So that'll be a minute before we get into that stuff.
And I believe that, and I think every Christian who I've ever spoken to believes that the source is the Christian, the source of your faith, the Christian understanding must be your own free will. But here's the thing about Christian values. There are a lot of Christian values out there that I think that we've just sort of assumed and we've in fact taken for granted.
Agreed.
Christian values are the idea that you should respect every single person as an individual, whatever the color of their skin, created in the image of God. That's a Christian concept. And in fact, it was a Christian empire, Great Britain, that abolished slavery to begin with. The idea that we should eliminate child sacrifice. What did the Christian settlers find when they came to the New World? They found a lot of civilizations that were murdering babies in weird religious rituals.
Yep.
It was Christianity that said we don't kill
all
children just
over.
because they're somehow inconvenient to people. A lot of the things, human rights, the very idea that human beings have rights are a Christian concept. And so I'd ask you, my assumption based on the question is that you're skeptical of Christianity, or at least of certain public professions of Christianity. One of my favorite Bible verses is, "By your fruits ye shall know them." And I think that the fruits of the Christian faith are the most moral, the most just,
Agreed.
and the most prosperous civilization
why
in
I've come
history.
back to it and
I make
stayed
no
with it.
apologies for believing
Again and again and again.
that Christianity is
Even
the
when I've
pathway
ran
to
away.
God. I make no apologies for thinking that Christian values are an important foundation of this country, but I'm not going to force you to believe in anything, because that's not what God wants, and that's not what I want.
Exactly.
So
I could not agree more with what he just said. I can't force you to come to faith. I can't force you to do anything. That's why I try to phrase every time I say, go read this, or I ask you to read this, or if you don't believe me, read this and this, and these kind of things, because it's not, I can't force you to do anything. What I can tell you is where I got my sources from, where I got my evidence from, and ask you to go to there too, and pray that you draw the same conclusion. And if you don't, that's fine, that's okay. Not my place. It's God's place. I can't change your heart. I can't make you do anything. That is God, and God alone.
Go ahead.
for the school system, do you agree that there should be Christian implementation, or do you think that school system should be neutral and be focused on science, literature, reading, writing, arithmetic?
Well, I reject the idea that anything is purely neutral.
Yeah,
Okay.
agreed.
There are for example.
I was about to say, like, reading alone is definitely not neutral, because reading alone, you will have the author's intent, and in having the author's intent, and in having when you write something, you write something with intent, with purpose, with knowledge, with information, with your history, with your past. All of those things impact your writing and how you write and what you write. So no matter what you do, your mind will be spoken onto paper when you write. That alone means that no writing is without individuals' impact, individuals' thought. No writing is neutral. The only neutral thing that I can think of is math. Numbers don't lie. That's the only thing. But I say numbers don't lie. Statistics can still lie, because statistics get influenced and made, and the questions made to get the statistics you want are made from the human mind. You can get any statistic you want if you ask the right question. So that's why you have to get multiple people and large volumes of data and large volumes of things to actually get a true influenced opinion on what something is, and what the actual thing going on is in something. But when you read, like, the writings of Karl Marx, of Hegel, when you read C.S. Lewis, when you read even J.R. Tolkien, when you read the works of anybody, Nietzsche, Plato, even fictional writers like Rick Riordan and J.K. Rowling and things like them, they all left little parts of their beliefs and thoughts in those writings. You will always see the author's thoughts bleed through a work. Always. Every single time. Always. Their conceptions and beliefs of the world will always bleed through. Every single time. They will bleed through.
Example, let's take a basic scientific fact, and this is a little spicy. I'm not trying to make this too controversial, but take the basic scientific fact of, can you take a pill to change your biological gender? Okay? Now that's something that 15 years ago, quite literally, every single scientist in the Western world would have said, absolutely not, that's crazy, and now people will. I think the premise of your question, I don't totally share it, because I don't think perfect neutrality is possible. What is it? You talk about history. Was Christopher Columbus a great explorer, or was he a guy who committed genocide against the native populations? These debates, I'm happy to have them, but I reject the idea that there are truly neutral debates. Anybody who's telling you their view is neutral likely has an agenda to sell you, and I'm at least honest about the fact that I think the Christian
and that's why I like JD Vance so much. And yeah, I am totally a 48 JD 48 guy, 100%. He will have my number. He will have my vote. Candidates he supports in elections, if I get to have that and know that, I will back them too. I will give what little funding, which is nothing right now, but where I can and what I can, I will give to those things. Because this is what I want in American politics, is open honesty. And if you can't be openly honest about your viewpoints and about your beliefs and things, then I don't want you anywhere near my politics, because I'm tired of my politics being filled with lies and deceit. It's just that simple. And if that bothers you to any degree, well, you've clearly got a lot of problems and got your own problems that you need to solve.
Foundation of this country is a good thing. Next.
Okay, thank you. And for the pill you're talking about, what do you mean specifically? Are you talking about testosterone, estrogen?
Yeah, I'm talking about hormone replacement therapy. That's what I'm talking about. Just to be respectful, let's keep it going.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Hello, Mr. Vice President. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to talk here today. I did not agree with many of the things that you said right ahead of this, but I don't think that's my point to discuss here. What I want to ask is,
okay.
you are married to a woman who is not Christian.
Oh, it's
In
this question. I've
her
heard about this question. I haven't heard
Wikipedia, I
yours
mean,
yet.
I just looked it up. I wanted to know what her faith was. I didn't know this before. But she still calls herself Hindu. You are raising three kids in interracial, cultural, racial, religious household. How are you maintaining, or how are you teaching your kids not to keep your religion ahead of their mother's religion? Or how are you teaching them that your kind, they're that kind who got here just few years or few decades ago is different or is better than your mom's kind who got here just a generation before? How are you balancing that? And when you talk about too many immigrants here, when did you guys decide that number? Why did you sell us a dream? You made us spend our youth, our wealth in this country and gave us a dream. You don't owe us anything. We have worked hard for it. Then how can you, as a vice president, stand there and say that we have too many of them now and we are going to take them out to people who are here rightfully so by paying them?
She's completely misinterpreting what he stated, and I shouldn't be interrupting her, and I definitely gotta be better about this if I start speaking with people in person, and I'm glad I get to do this as a practice, because I would want to jump in here too early, and I wouldn't want to let her finish. Her question is quite charged, and she's layering a lot of things in there, and that tends to happen a lot, and it gets really frustrating because people oftentimes, something you need to keep in mind as a person as well is ask one question and one question alone, and if your question is leading into multiple questions, you need to frame your question to get a good enough answer to answer those multiple questions, or be able to ask one question that'll let you see the likely answers to multiple of those questions, is I guess the best way I can think about it. Is when you're asking questions to somebody, ask one question that when you think about their answer to that one question is probably giving you pretty likely intentions on what their thoughts are on other questions in that same subject you could be asking. That's a good way to think as someone who's questioning, and that is a good way to think when you're listening to someone. When someone's asking this many questions layered as one question, pick one of them. Pick one of the things that they ask and answer that question as honestly as possible and as openly as possible in a way that answers the rest of their questions, or could easily lead into the answers for the rest of those questions. Because they probably will try to accuse you of, oh, you're not answering my questions, you're not answering my question, you're not answering my question. They want to just be emotionally charged and jump in on you in that way. And tell them, I'm not finished. Give me some time. Have some patience. I am answering your question. Your question had multiple questions within that one question. So I am answering one question in particular that is going to lead to the answer to all of these, to many of these things. And that you need to be patient, and you need to not just accuse me of things, you need to listen to that one question and that one answer. That is so vital for a questioner, is when you ask a question, listen intently to what you are being told, because you will get much more out of them in their response and how they respond and what they respond with in watching them and how they speak it and what they speak about it. And that will answer multiple questions for you if you pay attention and listen. People struggle with listening. They really do. I struggle with listening at times. So if I struggle with it, and I can be openly honest about that, I imagine there's plenty of people who can't be openly honest about that, but are struggling with listening. Listening is hard. It's just a fact. Listening is hard.
The money that you guys asked us, you gave us the path, and now how can you stop it and tell us we don't belong here anymore.
So
and one more thing, I'm sorry. One more thing.
God, this is where I get frustrated, is because a lot of the time these people are very emotionally charged and very emotionally thinking. So they think in the short term. Emotions are short term. Always remember that. Your emotions and how you feel on something oftentimes are in the moment and of the moment. This is why you always should be trying to process those emotions and think about those emotions and why did I feel that way? How did I feel that way? And those kind of things. That's a way of actually having good reason and coming to good reason. And people struggle with that, and that's really, really hard to do. It's not something easily obtained. I struggle with it still to this day. I'm still working on doing that better and doing that more and doing that more often. The biggest problem with me is my honesty and bluntness and willingness to blurt out the answer really can hurt people. And I know it can really hurt people. And I know there's a time and a place for that. And there's also a time and a place to be much more respectful. Something I'm working on. Maybe in the comments below, post stuff you guys are working on. Stuff. Think about stuff. Like, that'd be great to hear from people in the comments section down below on their thoughts on these kind of things. And great to develop.
Do you have to
there's
be
a lot there. I don't know if I'm going to remember all this, but
Yeah,
I will try.
I'm sorry. I had to say all of this, and please take it with due. I mean, I'm saying all of
course.
this with
No,
due
go ahead.
respect. I
Please.
have no
Thank you.
intention of causing a scene here or anything, but
We're not close to causing a scene.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
we talked about Christianity, all of this. I'm not even Christian, and I'm here standing to show support. Why are we making Christianity one of the major things?
Because whether you like it or not, you have come to a Christian country. And it is a Christian country that has forgotten its Christian ways and values, in all honesty. It has forgotten its Christian origins. And that is a simple look at the historical documents of the first 13 colonies. Look at the historical documents of the fact that we had blasphemy laws in this country up to almost the 1900s in several states. It was illegal to blaspheme God, and it was punishable to several years in prison. And in some states, early on, it was punishable by death. So, there's a deep Christian origin to this country, whether you like it or not, and as a foreigner coming into this country, just like I would have to respect the deep historical Catholic nature of many of the countries south of my border, I have to respect America's deeply Protestant Christian origins and nations when I come to there. And while they give me this freedom of religion to practice my own, and they're not going to push this Christian faith on me and force me to convert, I need to understand I am coming to a Christian nation of Christian values, of Christian purpose and intent. That's something I'm going to see and live and deal with every single day. And we need to get back to that as a society. We've caused ourselves a lot of problems by going away from that, by becoming more atheistic in all honesty. Just look at the metrics. Look at the stuff that's been happening. It's gotten worse in this country as we have become more secularist. As we become more secular, things have gotten worse, not better. We have not improved as a nation. We have weakened as a nation as we have become more secular. And I'm not talking about that in terms of the civil rights and stuff like that. I think post-civil rights is where we're running into the problem. That's when we really, really started to become secular. It was right at the end of the civil rights era. And we've really, really quickly declined and quickly ran into problems. We need to get back to our Christian roots as a country. Whether people like it or not, this country is Christian in its origins and has a deep Christian history. Christianity had a major impact through all of Europe. It had a major impact, therefore, in all of the Americas. So, in that aspect, The nations that stand here in the Americas to this day are deeply Christian in origin. And many of them have lost that Christian root and need to get back to it. And I promise you, falling back into it will bring more prosperity and improvements to society than not. That's my opinion on this. Definitely, and I need to profess this as well. I'm not a Christian nationalist. I don't need to establish Christianity as the national religion and force it down upon you. I've already stated that would be wrong of me to do so as a Christian. I cannot force your faith. What I can establish is that my nation will live by Christian values, will act by Christian values, and will think by Christian values. And in doing so, I can hope that encourages you to convert to my faith, because you see this growth and prosperity from my country, and this growth and prosperity comes from that Christian origin, and you go, wow, this is such a mighty, great, powerful country. This country is very deeply rooted in its faith towards Christianity. Maybe I should give Christianity a look and come over to it.
That you have to have in common to be one of you guys, to so that
I don't need you to. I do need you to live by the values of my nation, which were founded and established by Christian ethics. I'm eating a cookie right now. Sorry. I got some cookies, and I'm hungry.
I love America just as much as you do. Why is that still a question? Why do I have to be a Christian?
Okay, so there was a lot there, and I'm going to try to respond to as much of it as I can. So on the question of immigration, so first of all, I can believe that we should have lower immigration levels, but if the United States passed a law and made a promise to somebody, the United States, of course, has to honor that promise.
Agreed. Fully agreed. If we have made a law and a regulation and a ruling, and it hasn't been overruled by the Supreme Court saying that, hey, this goes against the Constitution or whatever it is, we have to honor that law. The same as we have to honor the laws that we have about illegal immigration, we have to honor about legal immigration. If we have promised you the right and the ability to stay here and you have legally immigrated here, I have no right to tell you to leave my country. I can't do that. You have come here legally, you have gone through the legal process, you have been accepted and established as a citizen of the United States. You are welcome. Congratulations. You can see that on my TikTok. I've done that for several people when I've seen like their coming to America things. I haven't like cared what they've looked like, who they are. I say God bless you and thank you for coming to my country. Because I'm incredibly thankful for those who are willing to go through the hardship and the struggle of coming here legally and establishing themselves as a citizen. Because part of that hardship and doing that hardship, it as a test. Hold on. Sorry about that. I am going to keep that in there. My neighbor had to ask me about, he's having to do the rear brakes on the back of his vehicle, and he's having his buddy help him do that, and his, my town's a little weird. We do Halloween on November 1st, not the 31st. So he can't take his kid himself to do trick-or-treating, and I'm not going to get too much into details, but his wife also struggles with some things and isn't very mobile. So he asked me to help with his kids, which I've done several times before, and I'll be taking him trick-or-treating probably later tonight, which, said he'd pay me for it, and I'm not going to take the payment because I don't need payment. I'm just going to help my neighbor. that aside, anyways, back onto this. As he says, we have to honor that promise. If we have made it a law and this is the way things are and you have come here before, we have to honor that promise. We are, however, allowed to say, hey, we're going to accept less people this year. Hey, we can't take in as many mouths. Hey, we're not in a state where we can afford to house as many of you. This is actually a great thing to bring up because I just had that conversation with my parents. My parents are getting pretty close to retirement age, and I can't tell you how disappointed I am in myself that I haven't become structurally stable enough and I haven't become good enough as a person yet to be able to take care of my parents. It's a dream of mine to be able to do that. Honestly, it really is. I really love to be able to afford to take care of my parents and provide for them and help them in their retirement. I'd love to do that currently for my grandfather and currently for my grandmother and currently for my other grandparents as well. That is like an ultimate dream of mine, is to be able to do that. It really is. And we just had to have a financial conversation where my parents haven't been, because of my financial struggles and being homeless so many times and all those things, my parents have been having to pay my car insurance for like almost 2 years at this point. And God, it's so embarrassing to admit that. But I'm just going to be honest. I genuinely, again, value that honesty. And in that honest conversation, I literally told them, like, I was going to literally tell them as a Christmas present to them, kind of when I got to see them this year, I was going to have that conversation with them, and I was going to tell them, hey, I don't want you to pay for my car insurance anymore. I'll figure it out. It's going to be tough for me, and I'm going to struggle. It's going to be hard for me, but I'd rather figure this out myself than I would have you keep paying for it. Because it's not right for my parents to have to keep paying for that. And I don't want them to. I'd rather take the financial burden and the struggle and the pains that are going to come with it and handle that than I would have them keep paying for this. That hurts me so much. I'm working to try and figure out a way to where I can pay them back for all of the stuff that they've done, which, God, that's easily up to like several $1,000s, which I know for some kids is even more when they're like college age and things like that. And it's not a debt that my parents already had this talk to me and already said, we don't want you to pay it back. And I get that they don't want me to pay it back, but I am so inclined to pay it back that I want to. It like I said, it's a dream of mine to be able to take care of my parents, to be able to have that financial flexibility, to be able to happily provide for them the retirement they want to have, and those kind of things. I wish I could be doing that right now for my grandparents. It hurts me that I can't do that for them. So, getting back to this, personal tangent aside, we as Americans do have to honor that promise. But again, as I was just saying in that conversation, if we can't afford right now as it stands to have our young people be able to buy houses, to be able to afford housing, if rent is continuing to be an issue, and we shouldn't even be looking at rent, by the way, no one should be renting, okay? You should own. Renting should be working towards owning that property, is how that should really be. Like, I am very much against renting, in all honesty, and the forms of it. It is just as bad as like the historical tax collecting that was going on in Rome and those kind of things. And look into that. It's actually really interesting. Like, there's a reason why there's a big deal about debitors and tax collectors in the Bible. There's a reason behind that. Go do the history. You'll find out. It's really interesting reads. But needless to say, America is perfectly inclined and perfectly in need and perfectly okay with having to say, hey, hold on a minute. We can't afford this many of you coming in right now. We're stressed out of our mind with our own people and our own population that we currently have. We have to take less of you this year, and probably for the next couple of years, maybe even next decade. Does that suck? Is that awful? Yes. But is the country so inclined and able to do that? Is every country so inclined and able to do that? Absolutely. And they are fully within their rights to do so. God is very clear, we take no burdens that we cannot carry on our own. And that it means with Him alongside us, as I should stress. And the same is true as for an individual as it is for a nation. It is just the burden is greater for those in charge of a nation. So they have to think about more than themselves, and they have to value more than themselves and more things. And there's more weight on their shoulders when you're in positions of leadership, like Vance is and all those things. And again, that's why I'm enjoying this questioning from him, and he's answering this stuff. It's so awesome, so beautiful that he's doing this.
Thomas, nobody's talking about that. I'm talking about people who came in violation of the laws of the United States of America, and I'm talking about in the future reducing the number of people. Sorry, what?
Can I continue on that?
Okay, this girl is very emotionally charged. You can hear it in her voice. I don't mean to be rude, but this is definitely somebody who's not interested in listening, and is very opinionated on that matter.
Because when you just said you are not stopping with the people who came here legally, right? But you are pushing out policies that hurt us, and these policies are not even solving the problem.
Give me some at this point, if I was Vance, I would stop here right here, because she is wanting to interject, so she is given a way to open interjection at this point. That's how you have to look at this. And I would say, give me a policy, and I will look into it, and I will genuinely look into it. And I would ask her afterwards, hey, would you give me your Twitter, and I will DM you on Twitter on my investigation and on this policy. I know Vance probably doesn't have time to do that, but maybe he can get an aide or somebody like that to do that for him. That would be awesome and beautiful. Obviously, probably really doesn't have time to do that. I wish he did. It'd be awesome if he could. But that aside, this is the moment where you have to ask, give me a policy. Give me a policy. Because if they can't lay down the exact policy and things like that, it tells you they haven't investigated and they have just heard. Many people have heard the word of God. Many people have not listened, just heard the word of God. Many people have heard things about Charlie Kirk. Many people have heard things about stuff. About Asmongold, about Tectone, about so many people. You can say heard. Few have listened. Few have looked. Few have read. And those are much more important things to do.
These policies are just creating chaos.
Ma'am. Okay, so again, I'm gonna finish answering the question,
awesome that he's doing
and then if I've answered all 9 of your questions in less than 15 minutes, then we can keep on going. We got to have a little fun, right? So here's.
Let's upset her. I can promise you that. Let's upset her. Good response by Vance. With a joke. Good response by Vance. Very, very Charlie Kirk thing to do. He actually did that better than how I would have. Honestly, way better speaker. Way better speaker. I need to take note of that and think about doing that in the future when I engage with people, because it would probably be a lot better of a tactic than what I usually do, because I'm super aggro and aggressive in my argumentation.
Here's the thing. I can believe that the United States should lower its levels of immigration in the future, while also respecting that there are people who have come here through lawful immigration pathways that have contributed to the country. But just because one person or 10 people or 100 people came in legally and contributed to the United States of America, does that mean that we're thereby committed to let in 1 million or 10 million or 100 million people a year in the future? No, that's not right.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. I, as a nation, just because I let 10 or 100 in, am not therefore inclined to let every woman, man, and child into my nation and borders. And on top of that, a lot of people often use the citation off the Statue of Liberty. The citation of the Statue of Liberty was a gift from us from France that we somewhat approved of. We didn't even... I need to do a little more research into that. But I don't even know if we agreed to all the things on the plaque. And all the terms on the plaque. And that's what a lot of people cite. But you need to keep in mind, that was a gift from us from another country. And I've definitely got a video in the works on France. Because, whoo boy, interesting. The French Revolution is quite an interesting investigation indeed. And French colonialism is a very interesting investigation indeed. And its impacts to the modern day, and honestly, how it's affecting Africa to this day, and how they're abusing it in Africa to this day, as I've been researching and looking into. I've got some pretty harsh criticisms coming their way, is all I'm going to say to that. Anyways, let's let the Vice President continue.
We cannot have, I'll go and finish, we cannot have an immigration policy where what was good for the country 50 or 60 years ago binds the country inevitably for the future. There's too many people who want to come to the United States of America, and my job as Vice President is not to look out for the interests of the whole world, it's to look out for the people of the United States.
Agreed. You have to look at the people currently in your country, because you can't take more in that you can't sustain and help. If you're struggling to sustain and help your own country, you cannot take more in. You have to take in less. That is just the matter in terms of things. And the U.S. right now struggles to take care of itself, struggles to provide for its veterans, struggles to provide for its youth, struggles to provide for these things. And we have to figure out how we're going to handle and help that before we let more people be able to use that. Because right now, I don't think anyone would be in disagreement that the U.S. is not actually taking care of its people that way. The people that naturally and intrinsically live here, whether you were born and raised here your whole life or are a legal immigrant. Like, just intrinsically. So that's not a problem. You can't be upset with a country saying, hey, we can't take more right now. You can't be upset with them for that. You can't.
Now, you asked a personal question about our interfaith household, and yes, my wife did not grow up Christian. I think it's fair to say that she grew up in a Hindu family, but not in a particularly religious family in either direction. In fact, when I met my wife, we were both, I would consider myself an agnostic or an atheist, and that's what I think she would have considered herself as well. You know, everybody has to come to their own arrangement here. The way that we've come to our arrangement is she's my best friend. We talk to each other about this stuff. So we've decided to raise our kids Christian. Our two oldest kids who go to school, they go to a Christian school. Our 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago. That's the way that we have come to our arrangement.
That's awesome.
But thank you. My 8-year-old was also very proud of his first communion. Thank you, guys. I'll tell him that Ole Miss wishes him the best.
Yeah.
But I think everybody has to have this own conversation when you're in a marriage. I mean, it's true for friends of mine who are in Protestant and Catholic marriages, friends of mine who are in, atheist and Christian marriages.
Yep.
You just got to talk to the only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions.
Corinthians goes into this really, really, really well. Corinthians is an awesome set of letters that really gets into this. And again, I will just say, I think the Christian worldview is better because, again, the more you read your Bible, the more you go, wow. They kind of give a lot of the answers here. And Corinthians goes into this, where Paul actually speaks to them about marriages between someone who converts and someone who doesn't convert on both sides of the aisle and both sides of the thing. It's It's really interesting to read.
As a family unit, for us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important Christian principles is that you respect free will. Usha's closer to the priests who baptized me than maybe I am. They talk about this stuff. My attitude is you figure this stuff out as a family, and you trust in God to have a plan, and you try to follow it as best as you can, and that's what I try to do. I want to make a final point. So I don't want to cut you off. I want to be respectful to all the people behind you in line, but I want to make this point about immigration, okay? If you ask the question, what is the exact right number of immigrants for the United States to let in, it is just very specific on the context. If you go back to the 1920s, the United States passed an Immigration Reform Act that effectively cut down immigration to close to zero for 40 years in this country. And what happened over those 40 years? The many, many people who had come from many different foreign countries and different foreign cultures, they assimilated into American culture. And there was an expectation that they would assimilate into American culture. I think we have two problems in our immigration system today. And my guess is you're probably a slightly more leftist political persuasion, liberal political persuasion, maybe not. But here's the thing. I remember back in my establishment GOP days.
And by the way, what he just said there about the 1920s is absolutely true. For 40 years, the U.S. basically had a closed border policy. It was incredibly hard to get in here. That's actually why, if you've done any research in World War II, Jews had a really hard time escaping to America, and getting here was really, really hard during World War II. It was really, really hard for a lot of times and things. During a lot of conflicts.
When I was still very early getting involved in Republican politics, I remember a conservative think tank person who told me that one of the reasons why immigration was really good is that if you had enough diversity in a country, people would mistrust each other and they wouldn't join labor unions.
That's horrible.
So when I see a lot...
That's... Wow. Oh my god. That is a, wow. Okay. Whew! And I'm glad I can see his face here, because I'm sure you can see his face there. He was very grumpy about that statement. He was not happy about that statement. That very much upset him.
A lot of left-wing people who theoretically support organized labor saying we need to flood the country with a limitless number of immigrants. They're unwilling to set any limitations on it. My response to that is you are destroying the very social trust on which American freedom and prosperity was built.
Agreed.
And that is really important to me. So the honest answer to your question, what is the exact number of immigrants America should accept in the future? Right now, the answer is far less than we've been accepting. We have got to become a common community again, and you can't do that when you have such high numbers of immigration.
You cannot do that when you have such a high flow. And we do have to become a common culture again. We have to figure out what our culture is right now. We've accepted too many for too long, and now we have to reassess as we have to close down the gate right now to talk amongst each other. Because we need to talk. We need to have a conversation amongst each other. And we're not doing that. And wow, it's shocker, it's causing problems. Who knew? Please make God just give this man to me as my 48th president. I would love if that is your plan, God. I would love if that's your plan. Because this man is just speaking such good honesty right now. And being so truthful in his statements.
Which is one of the reasons why we have the immigration policy we do. Thank you. Next.
Such a good answer.
Good evening, Vice President Vance. I just want to say it's an honor to actually be able to talk to you.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. One of my biggest questions is, I feel like one of the biggest problems that America is facing today is that ever-growing social political divide, and we're seeing this on the Republican and Democratic side. But we've seen that a refusal to cooperate with the other side has led to some major issues, including right now the government shutdown. And I wonder, as the party in power, what are your plans to address that issue towards, reaching that olive branch out to the other side to actually come to an agreement on how to go forward with our government?
Look, it's a very good question, and let me just say on the government shutdown in particular, the reality here is that there's a very simple bill that just reopens the government. It does it through pretty much the end of the year. That got every single Republican in the House of Representatives to support it, and then it got 52 Republicans in the Senate and 3 Democrats in the Senate to support it. But because of weird Senate procedural rules, it requires a 60-vote threshold. So on that issue in particular, when you have every single Republican with like 2 exceptions in both houses of Congress, I feel pretty confident. I know that I'm partisan. I know I have an R next to my name, but I feel pretty damn good saying the shutdown is the Democrats' fault because we voted again and again to open it. Now, but there's a broader question there, and I think most Americans, whatever their political persuasion, would actually like the country's political parties to work together better to solve the problems. And look, and I agree with that. And my approach when I was in the United States Senate was to try to find some issues where...
I'm gonna be honest with you and just give a hot take here. I started out my journey on YouTube and just watching YouTube a lot of the time when I was a kid. For one thing, I didn't get to start watching YouTube or like have access to internet or a phone until I was in high school. So I'm like 14, 15 at the time before I finally get a cell phone capable of doing that. Yes, I'm aware of how old I am, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. But that's just the facts of the matter. Anyways, that aside, my journey was oftentimes, for the longest time, like listening to people who were atheists, who were very much on the left side of the aisle, very opposite thinking of me. And the only thing we really agreed on was free speech, and I was very much pro free speech. It was like one of the ultimate values that I had. So that in mind, it is super interesting to me that as time has gone on, I have watched the people that I knew were centrists, that were middle of the road, and I started if you watch early Tim Pool, you'll know what I mean, because I watched early Tim Pool. I watched that dude when he had like 2,000 subscribers, I think is when I started watching him. Maybe a little more. Maybe he had like 100,000. I was a part of Louder with Crowder and watching Crowder when he was like at 100,000. I watched Thunderfoot, if you know who that is, and all sorts of people. I could give a list a mile long. What I watched happen was as time went on, as things moved, as things went along, the people who were centrist got left behind by the left. I watched, and the people who weren't didn't. The people who were right wing haven't really changed their tone, haven't really changed their viewpoints, haven't really changed what they were saying. They've been saying the same things, saying the same stuff, all the way back in 2014 that they're saying now. And the people in the middle, same thing. But I have watched the other side of the aisle become more and more extreme as time has gone on. I just have. Like, I can promise you, if you take an unbiased take of it, and you take yourself out of it, and you go back and watch and read through the history and take the time, you will probably come pretty close to the same conclusion. You may not change your opinions, but you will likely come to the same conclusion I have. And it's okay if you don't change your viewpoints or opinions on that matter. That is perfectly fine. But I very much think that we would all come to the same conclusion.
We could agree with the other side on and try to work with them on it. And let me give you one example. I really worry about concentration in the corporate sector. I worry about big corporate monopolies. I worry that when you have only one or two companies dominating an entire sector, it's bad for liberty and it's bad for prosperity. So you may be shocked to hear this, but I actually worked with Elizabeth Warren on some anti-monopoly stuff when I was in the United States Senate. But here's the problem. The problem is there is actually a lot of things where we could work across the aisle. There are a lot of President Trump is in my view, you haven't seen organized labor ever get behind a Republican.
I'm just going to say this about Trump. Trump was a Democrat and a former Democrat for literally his entire life until he started to run. I wonder how many people know that. Like, you know how many former Democrats are currently sitting in positions of power with an R under their name? There's a lot. Think about that.
At least in 100 years, like they have behind Donald J. Trump, there are a lot of areas of common ground on that question. The problem is, as reasonable as some of these people can be in private, in public, the current obsession of the Democratic Party in leadership, I'm not saying every Democrat in the country, but the current obsession of every Democrat in Congress is get President Trump, fight President Trump, attack President Trump. It is impossible for us to...
Their entire party, dude, right now, literally just seems to be the only thing they have to stand on, bro, is just, I'm against Trump. Anything he says, I will do the opposite of, which is just absurd.
Work across the aisle unless a person is willing to put down their partisan sword, shut the hell up about fake scandals related to Donald Trump, and actually work with us. That's the way you make this happen.
Agreed.
Next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next. I'm going to try to get through as many as possible, guys. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Vice President.
Hello.
Hi. I actually drove here all the way from Memphis, Tennessee.
Woo!
Go Tigers.
That's a drive.
So, I'm sure everyone here is aware of the Memphis Safe Task Force that has been in the city for about a month now, and I checked a little earlier. As of this morning, I believe they've arrested 1,700 people and seized about 300 illegal guns.
That's awesome.
So I want to ask, how does this law enforcement objective jive with Attorney General Pam Bondi's pledge to make the Department of Justice a more pro-Second Amendment Department of Justice? Because I'm sure most people in here support the Second Amendment. So how can Republicans and this Department of Justice,
I can see the tie-in,
use the current gun laws that are on the books that a lot of pro-Second Amendment advocates disagree with, that we wanted to overturn in the big beautiful bill, but we didn't get it?
Yeah. So I understand the question. And by the way, I supported some of those changes in the big beautiful bill. I know the President of the United States did too. We didn't have the votes to get them in there, and that's as simple as that. But I know exactly what you're talking about, because there were a couple of issues in particular. I talked to some of my Second Amendment friends. But here's the basic issue. We don't want people who have violated the law, who have committed felonies. The Second Amendment, like every other amendment, it's about due process. It's that you don't have...
So something interesting to think about here is that rights, when you if you go back to Rome, you go back to British law, you go through the ages and things like that. When you're given a freedom and a right, as Rome is actually probably the best example of this. Like the right to speech, to speak in the public square, was something as a Roman citizen you could have stripped of you as a consequence for doing something wrong. Metatron, someone I've watched for a long time, also goes into that, and he's awesome with that. I started watching him a lot more lately. I used to watch him all the time, and then I stopped, and then he started popping back up in my feed, and I really like this stuff.
Have your rights violated unless there is due process of law. If you're a person who's committed 4 felonies and a court has lawfully ordered that you shouldn't have a gun and you're running around with a firearm, I don't have any problem with law enforcement saying you don't get to have that firearm that is illegally possessed, illegally obtained. I think that's basic law and order. Now again,
Yeah, agreed.
if you had, if you had somebody come in and say, well, we don't.
Agreed. The law of the land must be followed. Now, if you have a problem with the law of the land, go through the measurements needed to change the law of the land. Again, Romans is awesome at this, and most of Paul's letters are awesome at this. It's again, I'm just gonna keep bringing it back to the Bible because that's what I'm about. That's what I'm for. Go take a read, people. Like, read. Don't fish. Don't hear. Read.
Think that person should have a firearm, but they haven't violated any law. That's a totally separate question. That's not what we're focused on. What we're focused on is violent crime and people who have violated, the bodily autonomy of another human people. A person who has committed an act of violence against one of their fellow citizens, we're going to clean up the streets,
And
get
that's
those
awesome,
people
and
off
that's
the
what they should
streets,
be
and
doing.
make America safe for the American citizens again. That is our entire law and order policy, and I think we're doing.
Our goal should be able to. Charlie Kirk had a video, where he was in Seoul, Korea, and they had a bunch of blow up, like in the middle of a park. It's the middle of the night, and there were just a bunch of families and couples in this park in the middle of the night on these blow up chairs, and couches and things like that in the middle of this park. Our goal should be that, for America. Just so you're aware, our goal should be able to have that in our streets and that at night. That should be how a safe America should eventually get. Okay? And if you disagree on that, I really want to know why.
A pretty good job at it. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a Christian man, and I'm just confused why that there's this notion that we might have owe Israel something, or that they're our greatest ally, or that we have to support this multi-hundred-billion-dollar foreign aid package to Israel to cover this. To quote,
I would strictly say that Israel is one of our best allies in the Middle East. Okay? I don't think Qatar is a great ally in the Middle East. We need them. We have to have them. I don't agree with Turkey as an ally in the Middle East. We need them. We have to have them. It is in our best interest as a country to have those as allies. Israel is the best one of those because they're one of the ones who most align with U.S. virtues. The other countries that we have as allies in the Middle East are not. I do not think Israel is our greatest ally and our most important ally. Not by a long shot. Honestly, I think that's Japan. I think Japan is probably our best ally in the world, has been our best ally for the long time, and it's really kind of funny how the best ally that we had for the longest time, that honestly we need to be a good friend to right now, which is Great Britain, and clap their cheeks a little bit, slap them in the face, slap them silly a little bit, and tell them, hey, get your shit together, because stuff's going really downhill for them. We need to come down hard on them on their freedom, on their actions against freedom of speech, on their actions against protesting, on their actions against these things. We need to come down on their government about this stuff. We need to bring a heavy hand towards them. I'll just be honest about that. And whether that's in trade policy, whatever it is, we need to do that. because what they're doing over there is appalling. Whereas Japan, we nuked 80 years ago. We nuked them. And they are now one of our best allies in the world. I cannot think of a better story of friendship being built from the ashes than Japan and the United States. And again, read and research into that story and how that came to be and how I came to that opinion. I've still got to do a little deeper digging. I always got to do a little deeper digging. You're going to hear me say that all the time. Because I never fully know an issue. I never fully understand an issue. So I'm always willing to learn. I'm always willing to research into something. Something I hold myself to as a standard.
Charlie Kirk, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly
So the biggest contention between us and Jews is whether or not we believe Jesus is the Messiah. We agree with Jews. In a way, we agree with Jews less. It's so interesting. We agree with Islam on more things about Christ than we do with Jews. But we agree with Jews on ethics more than we agree with Islam on ethics. And if you disagree with me, go watch Apologetics Roadshow, an inspiring philosophy. They do debates weekly on Islam. I think almost daily, actually, on Islam. Go take a lesson. Go listen to them. Once you've taken a listen to them, go look into what they've said in those debates, and you'll probably come to the same understanding of what I mean. Whereas with Jews, we really do actually agree with quite a lot of them, because we agree with, if you were to look at volume size, the New Testament is smaller than the Old Testament, and we agree with them and say that the entire Old Testament is true. What we don't agree with them on is the history. And therefore, by not agreeing with them on the history, we therefore say that the New Testament is true, and they disagree with us. So, we believe in the same God. I will say that much. I do not believe Islam believes in the same God that I believe in. I do believe that Jews, to a degree, believe in the same God that I do. However, I believe that Jews are wrong and are false in that matter. Because I believe Christ is God, that there is Trinitarianism. I will be doing a much better video on Genesis when I get these other videos done. So I've got too many videos on my plate right now. So that will come much later. Now was not the time for me doing my videos on the Bible and Genesis, and going through that entire history thing. Now is not the time. I'd love to do that. Got too many things on my plate right now. Can't. But I'd love to. But honestly, we have quite a lot of agreement with us in Jews. So I would be hesitant to state that point.
towards the prosecution of ours.
Yeah, so let's say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the President believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them in that case. Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the President of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the President of the United States, they're not controlling this President of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East. Now, you ask about, sort of Jews disagreeing with Christians on certain religious ideas. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the realities is that Jews do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Obviously, Christians do believe that. There are some significant theological disagreements between Christians and Jews.
Absolutely.
My attitude is, let's have those conversations. Let's have those disagreements when we have them. But if there are...
As we have always preached, again, read the letters, read Acts. You will find that Christians have always been open to the debate and have always wanted the debate. And we continue to do so to this day. So, yeah.
Shared areas of interest, we ought to be willing to do that too. For example, I really care about, one thing I really, really care about is the preservation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Christians believe that is the site where Jesus Christ was crucified, and also that his tomb is right there as well. My attitude is, if we can work with our friends in Israel to make sure that Christians have safe access to that site, that's an obvious area of common interest. I am fine with that. What I'm not okay with is any country coming before the interests of American citizens, and it is important for all of us, assuming we're American citizens, to put the interest of our own country first. That's what we're going to do. That's what we try to do every single day, I promise you. Thank you.
Agreed.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. I'm the president of...
Okay, not too much left, thank God. I'm like, oh, I'm looking at the timer on my other side of how long this video is. And I'm looking at this one, and I'm like, I'm worried about getting over like the 2-hour mark on this.
Our pro-life organization here at Ole Miss, Rebels for Life.
That's good to hear.
And I myself, as the president, am 100% pro-life. And I know you've stated, you being Catholic, that you, in the past, you've stated that you're 100% pro-life. But since joining the presidential campaign as the VP, you've kind of wavered how you see abortion. So I'm just wondering what your stance is right now.
Sure.
And do you think that someone else's right to liberty trumps someone else's right to life?
Well, first of all, I appreciate your question, and I appreciate the work that you do. You asked the question, do I think somebody else's right to liberty trumps somebody else's right to life? No, I do not. I, in fact, do not believe that. Now, you said, and I'm going to take issue with something you said, just the premise of the question, which is that I've wavered on the pro-life issue. I really do believe that the president has been the most pro-life president in the history of the United States of America.
I would agree with that statement
now,
for
said,
now.
There are two things that I think we have to keep in mind here. Now, one is the very, very hard question of, when we talk about our abortion policy, there are some very, very difficult edge cases. There are cases where you've got, an 11-year-old girl who was raped, who it would be unsafe for her to bring the baby to term. You've got situations where, bringing a baby to term would cause serious bodily harm, maybe death for the mother. That's one of the reasons why we believe in the exception in these cases where you have, again, they're edge cases, they're rare. I think the pro-abortion community would have you believe that's 90% of abortions. That's not true. But we got to be honest about the fact that there are some edge cases.
Okay. Personal story time. I'm gonna be... So, I'll just put it this way. When my mother was in the process of having me, she was going to lose... She wasn't going to lose. She did lose everything. She had no job. Her, the man who she had sex with, which was a one-night stand, and the condom broke, was accusing her of falsehood. They had, and they were bringing a case against her. So she had a court case looming over her head over this. My grandfather, who I love dearly, because of a disagreement between my mom and the drug addict that he was helping at the time, threw my mother out of his house, and she had nothing. My mom had decided she only knew of me in her womb at the time. My mom had decided that I was worthy of abortion. She was going to take her last ultrasound. After that ultrasound, she didn't think life was worth living. This was her thought process before she took it, I need to specify. And she was going to end her life. She had already had a phone call with my uncle, basically telling him goodbye. And she goes into the not the abortion clinic, the ultrasound, and she gets told, "You're not gonna believe this when I show this to you, but there's more than one of them in there." And she was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you're having twins." And that changed my mom's entire world. And instead of giving an abortion, even though she had lost her job, she had basically no support network, she had nothing, she decided she was going to do whatever the hell it took to give life and raise these two kids. And raise these twins. And further on that, my best friend is a case of rape. I'm not going to go into the specificity of that. The case of his birth would be a rape case. That best friend saved my life. The person who raped that woman, who was my best friend's mother, also, she was married to, and she gave birth to several more children with them. So, if you agree with abortion, in those edge cases of extreme poverty, of rape, of those things, I would have never been born to begin with. I would not be here on this earth. My best friend in the whole world, who later in my life saved my life, when I desperately needed it. And none of his siblings would have been born. So in that case, we're not just talking about one life not being born, but in this instance, you are now telling me that my life, his siblings' life, and his life were not worth being born because of these edge cases. I don't know if I agree with that. The way I view this, and the way I think we as Christians need to view this and need to hold this in our hearts, is yes, the child is in your womb. The woman is given the child to carry in her womb. That is a new life, and that is God telling you that he wants you to give life to this world. And that life is sacred and worthy of being honored and loved and cared about. Even if their life is going to be hard and tough and rough and filled with pain. That life is worthy of being able to have a chance at life, of being able to have the beauty of life given to it. In the case of the 11-year-old girl, she actually did giving birth to the child. They gave her a cesarean section. So you can come up with sad, tough horror stories. At the end of the day, a doctor's standpoint and a person's standpoint should be every life is worth the opportunity. Every life is the image of God and worthy of being given that life, and should have as much opportunity as possible to have that. And sometimes that's not possible. And that's okay. And that's for a doctor's judgment. A doctor is to give that life as much opportunity to be given birth. But if it's not possible and you're going to lose both the life of the mother and the child, if the child is born, that means that that child was never going to be able to be born in the first place. And therefore, you need to save the mother's life. And a doctor needs to do everything in their power to save the lives that they can save. That's what they're there to do. That's why they're doctors. That's what they're for. And that's how they should be. So, that's important to think about. And very oftentimes, the people who bring up these issues and these things like that, which this girl is not the case, it's the opposite case. When you give them these puzzles, when you give them these questions, you quickly find out that they just want all forms of abortion, and they're not really caring about the edge cases. They want abortion to stay as it is.
The second thing I'd say about this is that we have to be prudential and practical.
So I somewhat disagree with him here.
And what can get accomplished. And there may be disagreements about what exactly.
I will agree that yes, for now, as it stands, we have to be practical with what we can achieve. That doesn't mean give up. That doesn't mean concede. That just means, as we have often had to us, in the case of erosion, an inch at a time taken from us, we need to take an inch at a time for them.
That is, but if you look at the pro-life victories that the President of the United States has been able to achieve, he's been able to achieve them because he has worked within the system that we have. If your attitude is you are going to pursue the most aggressive pro-life option, even if it means you lose every election and every outcome means that you're going to be in a situation where the Democrats have abortion on demand up to the moment of birth to the very end. You've got to work within the political constraints that we have. Now, here let me just say something about this. And you know, somebody asked me earlier about my Christian values. And one of the points I made is that when the settlers came to the New World, they found a very widespread child sacrifice. I imagine there are some people who don't agree with my view on the pro-life issue. Let me just make an observation. If you go to historical archaeological sites where there were brothels, and the two oldest businesses in the world are gambling and prostitution, so there were brothels even in very ancient civilizations. If you go back to ancient brothels and you dig up the bones of the women who were working in these places, you will very often find a lot of children who were buried with them. And the answer is that whenever a society decides to discard innocent babies, they also don't treat their women very well. And whenever a society mistreats its women, it is very often the babies who come right after that. There is a reason why Christian civilization ended the practice of child sacrifice all over the world, and it's one of the great accomplishments of Christian civilization. I believe that we should try to be protecting every unborn life. There's a question of exactly how we do it, but I would never say that anyone's right to life should be sacrificed. Thank you, man.
Good answer.
First, I just have to say I'm thrilled to hear you articulate Christian values on a stage like this, and to remind us that things we take for granted and things we value so much have a Christian origin. So thank you for that. I really mean that. However,
so much of liberalism, by the way, so much of the far left is a sort of, if you really pay attention to it, it's a kind of perverted version of Christianity.
Yes, it is.
Like, there's nothing wrong, of course, with focusing on people who are disenfranchised, for example. That's the focus of liberalism. But if you completely separate it from any religious duty, any civic virtue, then that can actually become, for example, an inducement to lawlessness. You can't just have compassion for the criminal, you also have to have justice too, which is why I think that a properly rooted Christian moral order is such an important part of the future of our country. But sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, amen, absolutely. Now, as much as I hope and pray that we can be a nation of Christians, the idea of a Christian nation scares me. So I'd like to hear your feedback on a pretty nuanced argument here, that perhaps there should be a wall of separation, as at least one of our founders advocated, between church and state at the national level. However, that line can and should get blurrier as we descend to the community level. And perhaps that is actually the system, the structure that our founders gave us when they said Congress shall make no law establishing a religious body. However, states did have close relationships with churches at that time.
Yeah.
Do you think that is a rationale that works? Do you think that is the way we should implement around these Christian values?
So this is a very nuanced point, and I want to just make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page here. So if you go back to the First Amendment, it doesn't say separation of church and state. It says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. But if you go back to the founding time, there were actually a number of states that had formally recognized churches. So there was the Anglican Church of Virginia. That was the official state church of Virginia. Maryland at the time was the only majority Catholic colony, or at least had a significant Catholic representation of the original 13 colonies. There's a lot there. And yes, I do think that what happened is the Supreme Court interpreted Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion to effectively throw the church out of every public space at the federal, state, and local level. I think it was a terrible mistake, and we're still paying for the consequences of it today. But and I think this is your point, if you were to undo that, if you were to get back to a system actually meant by the founders where Congress is not setting up an established religion, but people in their local...
Because when you read through the Bill of Rights, and you read through all of these things, when you read through the Constitution, they specify Congress and Congress alone. They don't say states, they don't say anybody else, and when you read the Bill of Rights, they don't state, like, oh, this exact, like, the founders were pretty exact with their words, and pretty meaningful in intending with each words and what words they use.
Communities can kind of do whatever it is that they want to do. I think that would be a better system than what we have today, but I think the most important principle that we have got to remember is you do not have to completely kick God out of the public square, which is what we've done in modern America. It's not what the founders wanted. It's not good for the United States of America. And anybody who tells you it's required by the Constitution is lying to you.
Oh, yeah. I'm liking Vance more and more.
Hello, JD. How you doing today, man?
Good. How you doing?
In the wise words of Ricky Bobby, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Don't feel bad. Neither do I half the time, man.
Okay. First off, yeah, laugh it up. Okay, first off, I just want to say I am a huge supporter of the Trump administration. I I was 3 months too late to vote for you guys, but if I could have, I would have. So I'm a huge supporter of you guys before I make my argument, but there is something you guys are doing that is kind of disturbing me a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. You guys have sent the military into Washington, D.C. and a few other.
So I'm going to pause this here. If you look at U.S. history, Gangs of New York actually covers a historical point of this, the movie. The military has been used and has continuously been used throughout U.S. history, even back to the dating of the Articles of Confederation, to slam down rebellions and civil unrest in the United States. That is actually why oftentimes the National Guard gets deployed in national disaster zones. That's why they get called up and riled up. It's to establish peace and order. That's why. So, learn your history a little bit more and you'll come to find out this is not an uncommon practice. This is not a dangerous practice. This has been a practice for a long, long time throughout U.S. history. Yeah, you can do just a little bit of research into the gangs in New York, like I did, and I found out it was the 96 or 68 riots. I forget what they were over. They were like workers' riots or something. And the army was deployed. And they cannonaded the New York, and shot people in the fucking street. Which is what they did. Like, so this cannon has been used. When you look at our predecessing documents, the Articles of Confederation, before we moved to the Constitution, Washington himself marched down on a farmers' rebellion and quelled that before heading his way over. So, absolutely, there has always been use of military force to handle these kind of issues. There's a reason why they voted on it the way they voted on it.
Cities that I can't think of off the top of my head, which first off, they've had wonderful results. Like no one can deny the results of that. It's wonderful. Some might even say the greatest.
I like this guy.
I like him a lot. Yeah, I like him a lot.
Thank you, JD. I like you too.
Now he's gonna ask the question about all the shit that we did wrong. But that's okay. Don't ask your question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. Well, it's not necessarily something you did wrong, but it's what could someone else do wrong. Let's say we get a complete tyrant in office, and let's say Turning Point USA is having a huge protest against something really bad that we don't like, and let's say he's a president is saying that it's getting violent. How can we? I'm trying to think. My mind's kind of blank. What is the difference between?
What's the fine line? What's the fine line is what he wants to ask.
Between what you're doing and how could we prevent someone from abusing that power?
Yeah. So look, I understand where the question is coming from, and I think it's a fair question. And it's going to sound like I'm being sarcastic, and it really is not meant in any offense. But when you talk about what could another administration do, to take a wild, hypothetical example totally off the top of my head, what if Joe Biden sent the Federal Bureau of Investigation to start arresting his political opponents? Okay?
Yeah.
So here's something that I want every conservative to remember. It's an important part of my entire political philosophy is we cannot be afraid to do something because the left might do it in the future. The left is already going to do it regardless of whether we do it.
That is so true. And it is spooky. How true that is. Sorry, again, my cookies might be getting a little loud. I apologize.
That is the takeaway of the last 40 years. And in particular, if you look at what we're doing, if Joe Biden wanted to deploy the National Guard to a red state in a place where the murder rate was twice what it is in third world countries to actually go after murderers, that would be a great use of the
Agreed.
National Guard. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
I don't think Joe Biden would use it like that. What I'm worried about, frankly, is what the far left already did with American law enforcement, and that is the thing that we have to prevent against. And the answer to that question is you make sure the people who did it face penalties for using the federal power against Americans.
Agreed. When law is misused, you have to bring the people who did it to justice. And it has to be reviewed in a just court, and it has to be seen if it was that case, and if it was that case, just punishment should be issued.
Citizens. And by the way, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, JD. Honor to meet you, man.
Good to meet you too, man.
Okay. So that's kind of everything that I wanted to go over and look at. I'm just looking at this. It looks like this is this is his closing speech, which I'm somewhat interested in, but I really just wanted to get the questionings out, and this video is really, really long. So with that aside, I hope you guys enjoyed my commentary and my stuff on this. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'm really liking JD Vance right now. I am really hoping him for the 48th President of the United States. And I will catch you guys later and see you in the comments. Good day.